and hopefully some more people will join, but we have enough to go ahead and get started. So we do these meetings, every month, generally the third Thursday of the month. The whole past year, since the pandemic, we've been doing them online. Hopefully we're going to be meeting in person pretty soon. I'm going to start reaching out to some of my contacts about having in-person meetings again. Obviously, we're waiting basically for the all clear, when the companies that will host us, feel safe to have people in public spaces again. So,
what town do you usually have meetings?
I'm sorry?
What part of town do you usually have the meetings?
So last year and the year before, we were meeting off of Gate Parkway at Availity, and they have a nice place. So they were hosting a couple different user groups there, and then once the pandemic came down, their corporate headquarters said no more public meetings and stuff like that. So. They're waiting for, I think the company policies are waiting for CDC guidance before they can start inviting people from the public back into the company.
So. It would be nice if you could maybe somehow do like a hybrid, like if you can't make it to the actual location, you could still join on Zoom. Maybe that's a suggestion.
So that's actually the plan. So one of the things that's really nice about the way Availity is set up is they actually. They were actually the first company that I knew that was using Zoom, like kind of across the board. And their conference rooms all set up with like Zoom and Zoom cameras, and they're already set up for Zoom. So since they're already doing Zoom, that makes it a lot easier to do a hybrid approach where you can have some people in person, and you can also, do it remotely as well. And so my plan is, because I figure even once we start meeting in person again, that people are going to be, reluctant to, go into, public spaces for a while. And so my plan is to do a hybrid approach so that the people that, want to do it from home can still do it from home. And then the people that want to meet in person and stuff, we can meet in person.
That would be great.
Yep. So this presentation is kind of based off of the original presentation I did a couple of years ago on Gatsby, and it kind of summarized, when it comes to hosting, there's really a number of different ways that you can host websites. And the way I got started was, I just had HTML, some images. I had a web account where I could FTP, my HTML files and my GIFs and my JPEGs and stuff like that up to an FTP account, and then it was hosting the web. There's a lot of people that still, that's the way they host their websites and stuff like that. One of the things that's become really popular, I'd say probably in the last 10 or 15 years, has been content management systems, and there's a lot of them. And the one in particular I'm going to be talking about tonight is WordPress, but there's one that's also very popular in the Gatsby community called Contentful. But CMSs are, another way that people are publishing, websites. Another way is just through a regular web application, like maybe an ASP.NET application or Node.js application. And as a matter of fact, the JaxNode.com website, the website for this group, is running on an Express server and on Heroku. So, that's another way that, some publicly facing websites and stuff are set up. And then there's kind of what we're going to be talking about tonight, which is site generators. So I just thought it'd be fun to kind of go back and take a look at my website. This is from literally 19 years ago. And this one, actually, I used Cold Fusion. So I was using Cold Fusion at this point and a SQL Server backend. But, this is how I was doing my website, 2 decades ago. And so, some of the pros and cons of just doing an HTML site is that, obviously you don't need to have a server to render things out. It's very simple hosting, very inexpensive hosting. You obviously have very fine control over the HTML and CSS because you're actually, most likely you're going to be writing it yourself. Cons to that is it's kind of cumbersome, especially if you want to reuse layouts. And there's no, there's no built-in way for doing minifying, uglifying of CSS and HTML content. So you definitely can get that set up using Webpack or something like that. But I think nowadays we're all kind of used to tools and stuff that kind of automate that stuff for us. So for the content management systems, there's some that are pre-built web applications for publishing websites. WordPress is a perfect example of that. Joomla, these are perfect examples because it's all open source software. You can you can lease a server, or you can actually use services and stuff that already have it set up. There's already a bunch of hosted services for doing content management systems. And you don't really need to have a web developer to publish a website now. So there's a number of different companies like Wix and web.com as an example, where they just have like this admin you log into, and you can kind of they have like these WYSIWYG tools and stuff for how you want your website to look. And so a lot of this stuff has been made a lot easier. So some of the open source CMS software, we were talking about WordPress, Drupal is another example of one. Joomla is a very popular one. I don't think Contentful is open source, but like I was saying before, it's a very popular CMS system. So some of the pros and cons with using a CMS, and I can kind of speak to this a little bit because we use WordPress at my company as an example. So you can use pre-existing themes. That's one of the things that's really nice about WordPress is there's all this stuff out there already that you can use that's pre-built. The content can be created by non-web developers. You can set up permissions for certain content. So certain users have access to do certain things. So it has a lot of flexibility like that. Sometimes it can be inflexible. You really requires having a backing database, which may be an issue for some people. Requires an app server or servers. And one of the things you have to worry about this approach is what I call the /dot effect. And that's essentially, it's like what happens if you have some content or something that somebody's trying to get to that's very popular and you're hosting it yourself. Maybe you've leased a server and you're running your WordPress site on your server and stuff like that, and then you get 100,000 hits in an hour and stuff like that. Well, that could potentially bring down the site. So that's one of the cons with using that kind of approach. Web applications. So this is obviously a lot more fine-grained. You can use one of the many frameworks out there like Express or Hoppy or Next.js for building out your web application. You can use the platform of your choice. It doesn't have to be Express or Hoppy. But once again, this requires a live application server, and there's generally higher costs associated with doing this type of hosting. So just as an example, this is not too bad, but like the JaxNode website I'm hosting on Heroku, and that's like $7 a month. So that's not that bad, but Heroku has, scalability features in there. So if you need to scale out your container, you can do that, fairly easy with their software, but it's also, it can start to get expensive as you start scaling stuff out. And that brings us to static site generators. And so static site generators are, just generally, scripts or applications that will let you take site templates and themes. They're very popular in the Ruby and the Node.js community. you can, the sites get deployed as a static site, as just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And there's a build process involved that actually compiles the HTML. And you can deploy it anywhere that hosts a static site, but a lot of people, they're deploying to Amazon Web Services S3. You can also use GitHub pages. I have a number of different sites I just have deployed out in Netlify. So there's a lot of different options for doing your hosting, and they're either very low cost or free, depending on what you're doing with your hosting. And then Gatsby itself, they introduced their own Gatsby Cloud, so you can actually host now with Gatsby. So that's another option. So some of the current popular static site generators, I've used Jekyll myself. Jekyll is very popular. It comes built into GitHub. So if you want to host your website on GitHub, you can actually do that using Jekyll. Octopress is also another popular one. Middleman is also popular. And then the Node.js side, Metalsmith is one of the more popular static site generators. Metalsmith is interesting. That's actually the generator that the Node.js Foundation uses for hosting the Node.js website. There's also Hugo, Nux.js, Gatsby, which we're going to be talking about tonight. And this is one I haven't looked at. This is a fairly new one. This is Wordpress, which is the Vue.js, static site generator. So you can actually build or design your website using Vue now. And so that's one that we'll probably be taking a look at in the future as well. So what are some of the pros and cons of static site generators? So the pros, obviously, you can host it very cheaply. These are static sites. They're a lot easier to deploy. There's no database that's required, at least not on the front end. You can create content, basically just in HTML or Markdown, which keeps things simple. You can publish with existing CMSs. Like I'm going to be doing a demo tonight where I actually use WordPress for the content, and then we're going to use Gatsby to actually do the front end. And then, obviously, using this approach, you're less susceptible to the /dot effect. You can use Git as your source of truth, which I like a lot. And then the cons would be here that, it's like, well, if you're doing a static site, then, you're not going to have like the server interactivity that you'd have like if you're hosting an Express site or a Next.js site. But you get the benefits of being able to use stuff like Amazon S3, and this is the way a lot of websites are hosted now. They're hosting the static content, and then they may have callbacks that get made into some type of backing server technology. But I think this is the most bulletproof way of hosting the average website. So I want to talk about Jekyll real quick, just because this is one that I've also used. You can build pages in HTML or Markdown, which is quite nice. And question? Okay. So they have a templating engine that's called Liquid, which is actually, that's been pretty popular. And like I was saying before, is like GitHub Pages. Like if you're using GitHub Pages, which is the static publishing side of a GitHub repo, this is built into GitHub. So for instance, if you just wanted to host something with your GitHub repo, they've made that pretty easy to do. There's a branch you can set up there's a branch you can set up in your GitHub repo where you can publish static content. which brings us to Gatsby JS. So Gatsby JS, obviously, one of the things that's pretty nice about this is it's built using React. And so I think developers are kind of like this because it's very popular. I'm going to pause just for 1 second. 1 second. All right, so this is a serverless type of technology. It's very extensible through plugins. That's one of the things I like about it a lot, is that it's very easy to add features very quickly because of the plugin architecture. Something else that's also nice about it is that they have a offline access component. So for instance, like if you have a website or whatever, and you want it to, let's say, have it, be available when somebody's not connected to the internet, they have a way that you can do that. You can also, build your pages either using React or Markdown. And so that's something I also like about it, because I've used Markdown before. And then they have their own kind of like flavor of Markdown, where you can actually incorporate components called MDX. So you can create a component that you've done in React and then use that in your markup. So it's actually pretty nice. And they've done a lot of pretty amazing things with how they handle images and doing progressive image loading. And I'll talk a little bit about one of the new plugins they have tonight that does some pretty cool stuff with images. So React, if you're not familiar with React already, it's a SPA, or single page application framework. Next.js is also a React-based framework. If you've ever used React Native or familiar with React Native, it's the framework behind doing React Native mobile applications. And of course, obviously, Gatsby is a React-based framework. So getting started, the only two tools you really need to have are Node and Git. And then to install the CLI, you can do that using just doing a npm install -g for global with the Gatsby CLI. And one way you can do it of creating or generating out like a new site is you can just say Gatsby new and then whatever your site name is. But they also have this option here of being able to use pre-used templates, and which is really handy. So if you're looking to see like, okay, how can I get started with a site that's also a blog and it also does this and stuff like that, they have these different templates and stuff that you can use that kind of give you the extra leg up when you're getting started with Gatsby. And then to run it, use Gatsby Develop to actually run their real-time or development time server that has a hot reloading built into it, so you can make changes and then see the changes in real time. You can also just build out the static content using the Gatsby build command. And then if you wanted to serve it and see what it looks like locally, you can do Gatsby serve for doing that. And the structure of your Gatsby sites is there's a folder that's a public folder where any content and stuff that you want to make available to the public, you just put in that folder. You put all of your source into a source folder, and then inside that folder, there's like a pages folder. It's very common for people to use like a components folder inside the source folder for storing their React components. And that's nice because now you can share your components with your Gatsby projects. There's a file called Gatsby-config, and that's exactly what it sounds like. It's the configuration where you kind of configure different things that you want to have set up as far as like site metadata and plugins, that sort of thing. There's a Gatsby node, this is how you kind of hook in functionality using Node.js for doing things like writing out like pages and stuff like that based off of content that you may be pulling from let's say a GraphQL source. They also have a Gatsby-browser.js where you can load up some CSS or global CSS, that sort of thing for your site. And then being that's a Node application, there's also a package.json file. So if you want to build out a page, it's pretty simple. All you have to do is, import, React from React. And in this case, we have an export that we're doing on a function that's just returning back a div of hello world. So that's probably the simplest Gatsby site. There's no router that comes as part of the this. So if you're familiar with React, single page applications, there's React Router, which is very popular. With Gatsby, they have some of their own tools. One of the things they use here is the link object, which is a Gatsby library. And so, for instance, if you want to link to a page, it's say a contact page, you can just say like what I have here, link to, and then you basically put in the resource you're trying to get to. And then just like you would inside of an aref or ahref tag, you can put in the label that you want to use for that link. And here's an example of us using the link inside of the page. So we're doing an export here. And then inside of this div tag, which is our page, we have a link to the contact. And then the user will be able to click on that and go on to the next page. So one of the things I was still blown away by with Gatsby is all the different ways that you can style your content. So they support regular CSS off the bat, but they also support CSS modules. They have Sass plugins. They have CSS and JavaScript. They have style components. So whatever flavor of style sheet that you want to use, it's pretty much supported with Gatsby. I'm just an old-fashioned regular CSS kind of guy. So the examples and stuff I have tonight are all based off of regular CSS. The other really, I think, killer feature of Gatsby is the data feature. And so they have for the build and for the development process, they have a GraphQL server that's built into it. And then you have these different source programs or source plugins that you can use for pulling in data. So there's one for WordPress, like we were talking about earlier. If you want to just pull from CSVs, if you want to write your own, you can do that. And then you can query that data directly inside of your pages. And you can also query the data inside of components using the static query component. Whoops. All right. So here's an example of a page where we're using GraphQL. And this example here, we just have a parameter that is using a destructor to get the data back. We're taking some site metadata and printing it out. And then in the query here, we're just querying the site metadata with the description and then outputting it. So that's kind of like a very simple example of using GraphQL. And I'll have some more examples of this in a little bit. So if you're not familiar with GraphQL, you can define queries here using, it's very similar to a JSON type format, but one where you can also pass parameters in. And so in this case, we're using the Markdown remark, and then it's looking for an ID that equals, this GUID right here. And then, so in theory, this would just pull back that one record, but you can also have the option here to parameterize it. So in your query, you can set up a parameter and then you can pass that parameter into the query. So it has a lot of flexibility as far as being able to dynamically retrieve the information you need. So there's two types of plugins that you can use inside of Gatsby. There's source plugins, what we were talking about before. So for instance, if you want to feed data into Gatsby, you would use a source plugin or write a source plugin to do that. There's also transformer plugins. And transformers, essentially what they do is they take your your data, and they let you transform it. And so those are also very handy as well. And they all can be just installed using, npm or one of the other different package managers that's available. And then you just configure that. You set that up using the Gatsby config file. Markdown is just a shorthand for HTML. This is very popular with bloggers and writers. The thing that's nice about it is that, it's essentially, you just kind of write your content out like if it was just a text file. And then just by using some very simple, characters, and it's smart enough to go through and format that into HTML for you. It was invented by John Gruber. And GitHub, this is the kind of the default text formatter that it uses. And so it's used in combination with Front Matter, which is essentially kind of like a header that you can put into your Markdown files, where you can basically put meta information about that content into the Markdown file. So this is an example. This is of, let's say, a blog post here where somebody's put a title here into the post, and they have a date in here. So this is the front matter right here, the part that's in between these three dashes. And then if you want to do an H1 tag as an example, you just put the # in front of that line, and it'll put everything in that line inside of a H1 tag. If you just leave like a paragraph like this, all by itself, it'll put it inside of a P tag. If you want to do bulleted points, all you have to do is put an asterisk at the beginning of the line. So you can see this is very simple, very straightforward way of marking up your syntax. And then if you need to put like a link as an example, you just put whatever the label is inside of square brackets, and inside of your curly or your parentheses, you put in the link that you want to go to. And then you also have the capability of just putting regular HTML. So if you have something you just can't do with Markdown, but you want to have that HTML inside of the page, you can just put regular HTML into your Markdown as well, which is also a nice flexible feature. So I like this a lot. This is how I author posts and stuff like that on my website. Hosting. So like I was saying before, there's lots of many inexpensive options for doing this. You can use GitHub Pages, and the way that works is that there's a branch you can create in your repo called gh-pages, and then you just put your content inside of that branch. And if you are using, let's say, if you create a repo that's based off of your username.github.io, then the master branch will just display that out as content. You can also, like I said before, you can use Amazon S3. Amazon S3 is nice because it just kind of works as like storage. So you can upload your content to an S3 bucket, and then you can point let's say a domain inside of AWS to that bucket, and it'll just host that as a website. I'm currently using Netlify a lot. Netlify is very nice because it has an integration with GitHub, and then it recognizes Gatsby sites right off the bat. So it's able to just automatically do the build process. There's no special setup or anything like that you have to do in order to use Netlify with Gatsby. And then, as I was saying before, Gatsby has their own hosting as well. I'd like to add this one in here because every once in a while I run across a friend of mine who's also, uploading, content to websites and stuff like that. And every once in a while I'll come across somebody that's still using FTP. Don't use FTP. This Scott Hanselman from Microsoft likes to say, Git is the FTP for code. And so there's so many different ways now that you can integrate a repo that you have with, server, with CI/CD processes. There's no reason to ever use FTP. So one of the things I'm going to be doing tonight is I'm going to be demoing the Gatsby WordPress integration. And the way I like to look at this is almost kind of like the best of both worlds, because I know some people that, they use WordPress, and one of the reasons why they use WordPress is that it's very easy for somebody that's maybe a knowledge user, but a non-technical user, somebody that's not familiar with like how to craft HTML. But they know, like, if I need to make something like a subhead or something like that, I can put a couple pound signs in front of it. Gatsby, gives you all of the WordPress gives you all the benefits and stuff like that of content management system. But then if you want to do the front end, let's say using Gatsby, you can set up a build process with webhooks as an example, where you kick off a build process every time somebody, let's say, posts new content or something like that into your WordPress site. And the term that I hear people using quite a bit now is called headless WordPress. And so what a lot of companies and organizations are doing now is that they're writing their content, they're creating their content using WordPress, but then the actual hosting, they have a build process set up that actually uses Gatsby to take the WordPress content, essentially build it into a static website, and then deploy that out to static hosting. And so that's pretty nice, because that kind of gives you the best of both worlds. You get the advantage of being able to use a content management system, but then you get you also get the ability to have the fine-grained control over exactly how your website looks and executes. You can use Webpack and all these other things that are built into the Gatsby. And so this is considered to be I think the best of both worlds for people that are operating that type of environment. In order to get that to work with WordPress, there's 2 plugins that you have to install in order to use this. One's called WP GraphQL, which it just essentially adds a GraphQL component to your WordPress site. And then there's another one called WP Gatsby, and WP Gatsby essentially does a kind of a shaping of that GraphQL content. So you have to have these 2 plugins installed in order to use this with Gatsby. And then in Gatsby itself, Gatsby actually has a plugin you use for pulling in WordPress content. And I'm going to demo what that looks like tonight. So one of the things I also want to kind of cover is upgrading from older versions of Gatsby to Gatsby 3.0. And the way you do this is actually, it's not that difficult. You just make sure you're upgrading to the latest version of Gatsby. And then if you use the -- save when you're installing the latest version of the Gatsby module, you can also run npm outdated. And what that'll do is that will show you essentially what are the current versions of modules you're using, because there's all these sub-modules and stuff that you're going to use with a Gatsby site, like Gatsby image plugin is an example of one. And what this will do is this will go and show you, okay, if you want to get these updated, this will show you what version you need in your package.json, and then you can use that to very easily kind of upgrade the modules and stuff you need to have to use Gatsby 3.0. There's a couple of things that are not backwards compatible. So for instance, like one of the sites I had, I was using Navigate 2, which is a function that you can bring in from a module. And now it's just Navigate, so you don't have to use Navigate 2 anymore. If you're using module CSS as an example, the way that you previously imported that in is you just import, you name the style that you want to use for your module from that CSS. That won't work anymore. Now you have to do an import, star as module style. That's actually, I need to correct that here in this slide. So you do import * as module style from module.css. The Gatsby.node.js does not include GraphQL by default anymore, so you have to import that in manually. And then if you're going to be using Gatsby 3, it requires a minimum version of Node 12.13. And that could be an issue if you're using Netlify, for example, because it uses Node version 10. So there's a way, by default, it uses Node 10. So there's a pretty simple way of being able to tell Netlify, if you're using Netlify, to use a newer version of Node for doing your Gatsby builds. The Gatsby plugin image is a new plugin that was recently added to Gatsby. And it does a couple of things. It changes. There's a lot of like GraphQL functionality and stuff that's built in for looking up images and being able to reference images. So there's a new property that you'll see on the, let's say if you're using image sharp as an example, it's called Gatsby Image Data. There's new static image and Gatsby image components that you can use for displaying your images. And these default to the correct aspect ratio by default, which is kind of nice. Fluid images, if you're using fluid images in previous versions of Gatsby, I think they still do exist, but I think they've been deprecated. And so you definitely want to move away from using those. And then they're supporting WebP now, which is pretty nice. So what they do is, they do that inside of a picture tag. And so they can use an image, a regular old-fashioned image source as a child tag inside that picture tag. But if you're using a browser that supports WebP, then you get this functionality as well. So this is all pretty nice. So to install this, if you want to use Gatsby plugin image, you have to install Gatsby plugin sharp and also transformer sharp. And then once you have those plugins in here, you can start using Gatsby plugin. Something else they did, I think is quite nice, is they've offered code mods. And think of code mods as being a way that you can automatically refactor your code to take advantage of some of these new features. So they have a code mod, as a matter of fact, that you can use with Gatsby image plugin. And what it'll do is it'll actually go through and rewrite your code to use the newer syntax or the newer components and stuff that you would use. I've tried this a couple different times. It's worked every single time that I've tried to do it. And the way you use this is you use the npx command, Gatsby-code mods, and then in this case with the Gatsby plugin image, you would just do that and it would run. I would make sure that you do that in a new branch. I wouldn't do that in your release or master branch, just in case it does screw something up. But this is actually a pretty nice utility they have as part of Gatsby. So with that, let me go ahead and start doing a quick demo. And the first thing I want to do here is I want to open up a gist that I have. And let's go to my gists. And I'm going to come to this one right here. So I have a website here that I do for local Craig Airport Pilots Association, as an example. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here. I'm going to open this up inside of Visual Studio Code, and so you can see this is the site. And I'm going to actually pull the site up here so we can see what it looks like. So this is our website. See, I haven't updated it in a while, but this is the site, and we have a couple of different things on here. We have resources that the pilots can use. We also have a little weather widget here, so we can get the aviation weather, which is kind of nice. But this is using Gatsby 2.0, and you can see we just got a weather update there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the process of actually upgrading this to Gatsby 3.0. So let me go ahead and I'm going to run npm install Gatsby latest. And I'm going to do a save. Before I do that, I'm actually going to create this. I'm going to create a new branch. So let me go ahead and create a new branch. I'm going to call this, we'll call this Gatsby re-upgrade. There we go. So now we switch to that branch. Now I can say npm install Gatsby latest. And we will save that. And while that's running here, the next command that I run after doing this is the npm outdated, which would show me, give me a table of basically which plugins I need to upgrade in here. So I'm going to go ahead and come here to package.json here. And this is the, these are all the different modules, all the different dependencies I have here inside of this, this project.json file. And you can see I'm using React Helmet, I'm using plugin Sharp, copy linked files, remark images, the source file system, which lets you use use GraphQL to actually import in or do a GraphQL query on files inside the file system. And then there's also Remark, which you can use for Markdown content, and Transformer Sharp for Sharp-based images. And that is still going. We'll let it go. We're getting pretty close here. And it should be installing Sharp. So if you're not familiar with Sharp, the Sharp module for Node, this is really fast, really nice image processing module. And one of the reasons why it's so fast is it's completely written natively for whatever processor you're running on. So I'm running a x86 processor, and it's just compiling this module for that processor here. And that's the last part of this this install. But it's really fast, and it's one of the, I think one of the nicest features of Gatsby is that they use image Sharp. So I think that's finishing up. All right. So now that's done. I'm going to go here. I'm going to run npm outdated. And this is what's giving me the table. It shows, okay, well here, using Axios 18.1, but the latest version is 21.1, Gatsby image, all these different things, they all have upgrades. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over here to this gist I had up just before. And I'm just going to copy all this stuff out of here just to speed things up rather than go through and put that stuff in one by one. All right. And I'm just going to paste that in here. Now I have that in here. So now if I want to go and run this, try running this, I'm going to do Gatsby. And I'm going to say Gatsby develop. And that will try to do a quick development build and host a web server that we can use for testing it. But we should see some errors here. I'm hoping we'll see some errors here. Okay. So there's some things in here it's not liking. But looks like it went ahead and hosted it. It's kind of weird. We try pulling that up. So let's do localhost 8000. All right, so we're seeing a bunch of errors here. And it looks like it's having to do with the way that we're importing in this some of these modules here. So let's see if we can't fix that here real quick. So we look right here. We can see that we have this footer. And this is what I was talking about before, where this is kind of the old way of importing in a module. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the asterisk as, so it just knows to import everything in there from the CSS. I'm going to do the same thing for the header here. The nav bar. Yep. And there's also this normal header here. And that looks like, let's try compiling that again. Ah, we got a failure again. There's something in there it's not liking. It's looking like the post CSS. It's kind of blowing up on the post CSS here. So I'm not exactly sure what's causing that. I've done this before, and I didn't run into this problem before. It may have to do with the cache. So rather than try to do a live debug on this, I'm going to go on to the next part of the demo, if you guys don't mind. And then I'll add a little addendum here after we do the meeting to show how I fix this. But I think what I may have to do is add some post CSS because some of the plugins I'm using are using post CSS. So I may have to add some modules for that. So let me go ahead and kill that. And I'm going to come out of here. And I'm going to show what the process is like of actually genning out a new Gatsby site. So if you want to gen a new Gatsby site, the way you could do that is you can say npm init. We could also do Gatsby new and then whatever our site name is, but you can also say npm init Gatsby. And this gives us a couple questions here. What do we name our site? Well, let's just call this the JaxNode site. And then it gives us the project name here. And then they give us a little chooser here where we can choose if I want to use a different content management system. So for this example here, I'm not going to use anyone, but you can see here where they have WordPress, Contentful, Shopify, Netlify CMS are all in here. And then it gives you the option of different styled components that you might want to use. So I'm just going to use the regular CSS for this. And then they give you some options of some things you might want to have for your site. So they give you the ability here to build and host for free on Gatsby Cloud. I'm not planning on deploying this, so I won't bother with that. I do want to have responsive images. I'm not going to worry about Google Analytics. I'm not going to add page meta tags for this, but I may want to have an automatic sitemap. I want to generate a manifest file, and I want to add Markdown support. And we'll go ahead, done. And this should go ahead and install a new Gatsby site for us. And that's actually going a little bit quicker than I thought it would. But like I said, this is kind of like a, almost kind of like a default or starter site here. So I'm going to close that. Now it's installing the plugins. All right. And now it's created the site. And it even gives us instructions on how we can get started here. So it just tells us to CD into, JaxNode site. So we'll CD into that. I'm going to go ahead and launch Visual Studio. So you can see there's the site. And to run this, we can just say Gatsby developer npm run develop. So that's starting up here. And I'm going to open up the source here while that's doing. I'm going to go to, here's our home page. And we can see here that there's a set of links here that's supplying us data. And then it has a congratulations here. So I want to open up this page. And here's our page. So there's that congratulations that we saw right there. So let me come back here to Visual Studio Code. And I'm just going to move that over here so we can see that. And I can say congratulations. JaxNode. Hit save. And we see it just automatically added that right there. And so pretty simple to go through here and start, changing things and seeing it, those changes happen real time. So that's the kind of example of a very quick and dirty, down and dirty starter site. I'm going to go ahead and kill that. And now I want to do show you how we can do a WordPress site here. So let me come out of here. And let's remove that. And while we're removing that site, I'm going to go ahead and bring up this WordPress local application. And this is a very handy tool if you're working with WordPress because you can come here, you can add WordPress sites and just run them locally, test them locally. It has all this, everything set up with the database and with the web server and Nginx and all that. So I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to hit start site, and I'm going to open up the admin here. All right, so here is our WordPress site. I don't have a lot of content in here. This is an example. I just have this one Hello World JaxNode here. But one thing that I did do ahead of time is I installed some plugins. So I already have WP Gatsby and WP GraphQL already installed in here. So if I want to come over here and load up their graphical IDE as an example, we should see in the Schema Explorer over here on the left that it's got all of the, it's got all this WordPress stuff in here. So now that that's running, the next thing I want to do is I actually want to create a new Gatsby site that's going to be able to pull from that site. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say Gatsby new. And I already have this, I tried this before. There's a, I'm going to create a WordPress Gatsby site. And then the second parameter in here after the name of your site, you can actually link to a Gatsby starter. So in this case, there's a starter they've already created for working with WordPress. I'm just going to use that just to show you how this works. And so I'm going to go ahead and scaffold that out. And it's going through and it's creating the site now. So these starters are normally pretty quick to pull down here. And once it finishes pulling down, I'm going to go into that. All right. Now it's adding Sharp. Doing the post install. All right. So let me CD into that. And this is pulling up the site here. And the thing I'm going to go to first here is this Gatsby config. And this is where we have the plugins and everything set up here. And you can see right now, they have this defaulted to this WordPress engine demo. I'm just going to go ahead and run that first so we can see what that looks like. So let me come over here. I'm going to do Gatsby develop. And this may break. So I don't know if no, I think this should work. All right. It's getting the Gatsby source WordPress in here. You can see it's pulling down menus, pages, and it's doing its build here. The development bundle. And let's go to, and here's WordPress blog. So you can see there's a bunch of stuff in here that they already have set up where they're already using that content here. But I have my own WordPress site we just pulled up here. And this is Gatsby local. So I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to go here into Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to paste that in here. And I don't need two HTTPs. All right. So now I've got the new source here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here, kill the development server, rerun it, come back here, And what did I break? Test local GraphQL. I do believe I'm running that. Let's try opening up the site. Do GraphQL just to test that. And it looks like it is running. Let me come back here. We try doing that again. And it failed again. That's interesting. Oh, I know what the problem is. There's no self-signing certificate. Let me try that one more time. So I'm not running TLS on the local. So there, now I can come back. And let's see if I need to manually update this. I think it should come up on its own, but we'll find out. All right. Hit refresh there. And now it's pointing to my WordPress site where I've got my one post here. And it even has a picture of me there. So this is a kind of a very simple example here of how you can connect. But the thing that's really cool about Gatsby and Gatsby Develop is I can just come over here, the local host 8000, and I can say underscore GraphQL, and all of this WordPress content now. I can go through here while I'm doing my development and just go through here and just start taking a look at all these different. Shouldn't have any of that in there. And I can just come through here, I'll just pull back an ID from all the WordPress categories. Let's see here, name, run that. So you can see very easily, how quickly you can just go through and just start playing around with the queries to get the data that you need. It's nice and simple for working with GraphQL and Gatsby. So that concludes the demo. Are there any questions related to the stuff I was talking about tonight?
No.
Nope. Okay, that's good. So I was just going to say, one of the things I also did with using the source plugins, if we go to GatsbyJS.org, or .com. One of the things I can do here is if I want to take a look at, let's say, some of the different plugins and stuff that are being used. Let me go to learn. Let's see here. References, guide. They actually have really good documentation on their site. And that's the one thing that's been kind of interesting to see is how this company is, it's a company now. It's not just a framework, and how they've really done a pretty good job of going through and documenting all these different features and stuff like that. Let me see if I can't pull up. Let's see here, community. So here are some of the plugins here. So one of the things I was looking to do with one of the websites I have a YouTube channel, and I was looking for a way to very simply kind of like create a set of pages based off of some of these different YouTube videos and stuff that I've done. So one of the things you can do here is you can type in YouTube, is an example here. And you can see right here, well, here's this Gatsby source YouTube plugin. And so as an example here, if I come here to the polyengineer.com website, I can go over here and I can add this videos page I can go to. And what it's actually doing is it's actually going through and it's querying that data at build time to pull back all the different YouTube videos. And I can come through and I can page through this. And that's one of the things that I absolutely love about Gatsby is that there's all these plugins and stuff that are already written for you for doing, things that, that might have been a chore. So for instance, like if you're trying to do stuff with SEO and social media as an example, there's an SEO plugin that you can use and component. Obviously, you can use all the React components as well. So if there's built-in stuff you want to use with React, you can use that. React Helmet's an example of that. Some of the other things that I thought were really handy was they have stuff built in for doing sitemaps. They also have RSS feed. So if anybody out there still using RSS readers as an example, there's an RSS feed that I have off of my website as an example. There's a plugin for Google Analytics. It's like you name it, there's a plugin that's been written for what it is you're trying to do. And so that's the thing that I really like a lot about Gatsby is that they've made it really easy to add on functionality to your website. And even if you're trying to do some stuff where you have some interactivity, example, like I think a lot of people have like a contact page or something like that they have on their website as an example. So if you're using something like Netlify, they've got functionality built into Netlify right now where you can do posts to Netlify, and it will basically keep track of that and send you an email notification every time somebody tries to contact you, as an example. So there's lots of functionality like that that you can very easily add just using plugins. So here's some of the resources that I've used. I thought were pretty good. There's the GatsbyJS.com website, which obviously has all the documentation. One of the people that works for Gatsby is this fellow by the name of Jason Lingstorf. And he has a channel on YouTube called Learn with Jason. It's pretty cool, where he sits down with different, either content experts or people that are looking to learn, and for like an hour and a half at a time. And like if somebody wants to add, let's say, search into their website, or they want to add like OAuth logins, an example like that, he'll sit down with somebody for like an hour and a half, and they'll figure out how to get that to work with Gatsby. So that's an excellent channel. There's also a Gatsby JS channel. So they just recently, when they launched Gatsby 3.0, I guess a couple of weeks ago or whatever, they did a conference, like a live conference, obviously all online because of the pandemic. But they took all of the presentations they did and they posted them on their YouTube channel. And so that's also a good resource. So I've got that in here as well. So typically what I do, I finish up these presentations and stuff, is I take the slides and the source code or whatever, and I just put those up on onto our Meetup site. Meetup site obviously is down for right now. Once it's back up, I'm going to post these slides and stuff up there. So if you guys want to go back and take a look at this, you'll be able to do that. Any other questions before we say goodnight? Nope. All right. Well, thanks, gentlemen, for coming out tonight. Hopefully, we'll be able to meet in person here pretty soon. Cross our fingers. With that, have a nice evening.
Thanks. Thanks you as well.
All right.